Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to our Tuesday Live. Today I have the pleasure of having a guest with me. This is Kathy. Everyone
Hi.
say hi to Kathy. So if you've been in the clinic recently, you may have met her. She is a registered nurse and is currently in the Belmont Nurse Practitioner Program. So she's been working with us, seeing some of our patients. But Kathy has a unique story because we all have stories, and hers I wanted to share with you guys because we often get asked about weight loss surgery, about what I think about it, what the complications are like, what does it feel like, all kinds of different things. And Kathy's unique in that she's had great experience with this surgery, and so I wanted to just take some time and interview her. So Kathy, let's start with, tell us some about your weight journey before surgery. Like, how long did you struggle with obesity, different things that you tried to work on your own health before you even got to surgery?
So I was obese from the age of 5.
Mm.
My parents gave me medication and did not teach me the right eating habits.
Mm.
So I struggled with my weight, and it was not until my 30s that I was going to a medical weight loss clinic that actually suggested the surgery.
Okay.
But I had tried all kinds of stuff. I mean, Thin when it was back in the day.
Yeah.
Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig. I mean, you name the diet book, and I still have it on my bookshelf.
Yeah. Did you find success? Like, did you find it yo-yoing? Like some things would work for a little bit and then it wouldn't work, that kind of thing?
Yes, the actual best success I had was when I was an exchange student in Europe.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I lost 60 pounds. None of my clothes fit when I came back after 6 months. But I biked everywhere, and to get food, I had to go a long distance, and I had to carry it back.
Okay.
So I really didn't eat that often.
Huh. Did they have less processed foods there too? Did you cook more of your foods than you did here in the States, or was the food types about the same?
The food types were the same because being a college student, we actually shared a kitchen. And so I ate a lot of Burger King, McDonald's, their kind of version of fast food. I ate at the cafeteria there. So yeah, the food was, and we drank a lot of alcohol. So the food choices weren't the greatest.
Okay.
But I kind of did the intermittent fasting because I didn't eat in between. And then I did a lot of biking.
All right, so not a continuously grazing pattern and just a lot of activity, and you were probably also younger at that time too, if I had to guess.
Yes, early 20s.
All right, so when you were in the medical weight loss clinic and they suggested weight loss surgery, what was your first reaction? Like, how did you first take that, hey, we think that you should think about this?
So one of the exchange students from Brazil had weight loss surgery, and she did not follow the diets that were appropriate. And so the whole time I was in Europe, I actually saw her sick. And so I came back going, that's nothing I would ever do. So when I had the conversation with my nurse practitioner, I actually left there crying. But I was to the point where I couldn't walk down the street. If I walked up the stairs, I didn't go back down in the evening. And so I knew something had to change for my quality of life. And so I went and talked to the surgeon.
Okay. And the surgeon recommended which surgery to you?
For me, he really pushed me into the sleeve.
Okay.
So I did have the sleeve the first time I had bariatric surgery.
Okay. So explain to our viewers kind of what the sleeve is. What do they do when they do a bariatric sleeve?
So they actually go in laparoscopic, and they take a device that cuts and staples your stomach, and they cut off a portion of your stomach. So you just kind of have a little banana left.
Okay.
And from the research, it shows the portion they cut off is really the stretchy portion. So what's left does not stretch as much, but can still stretch.
Okay. Did he have reasons of why he recommended that surgery over the traditional gastric bypass surgery? I mean, what was his thought process, or how did he explain that to you?
So for him, it's a less invasive surgery, less recovery time. He said, oh, we see success. After I got to know, I became a nurse afterwards. So I didn't have the medical knowledge then. So I just went with what he said. After I started getting medical knowledge, I know from my history of obesity, it probably was not the best choice. But it was what he pushed in, and I think it was because it's a shorter surgery. Less process.
Yeah. And so for those of you that don't know, the gastric sleeve, it was originally designed because all we had was the Roux-en-Y traditional gastric bypass surgery. And this was designed because it was considered to be a safer surgery. Kathy's right. The recovery time is less with the gastric sleeve. There's generally less complications. But when it was first designed, it was never meant to be the end-all procedure. Surgeons thought at the time is that we would do the sleeve, you would have some weight loss, get the patient a little bit healthier, and then you would go in and convert to the Roux-en-Y surgery. And what we found is that some patients did fine with the gastric sleeve. They had great results, but then there was a large portion that didn't, and they would move on to that second part there. The recovery time, downtime is a little less, but you still have, so after gastric surgery, whether it's the sleeve or it's the other one, you still have to worry about some nutritional needs afterwards. So what type of, let's start with supplements. What type of supplements did they have you on after that first surgery?
So they told us to take bariatric multivitamin, iron. You are getting less because of your restriction, but you're not bypassing anywhere, so the absorption's a little bit better. Okay. So that surgeon's office did not push so much the vitamins as they would if you have bypass and your absorption process is different.
So basically after the sleeve, you just need to make sure you're taking a multivitamin that is a bariatric multivitamin, not a regular multivitamin off the shelf kind of thing. What about your nutritional needs? What did they tell you after the surgery, how they wanted you to eat and drink?
So they do pretty much the same diet that we have here.
Yeah.
It was low carb, no sugars. Some people still do get what they call dumping syndrome with the sleeve. It's more common with the bypass than the sleeve. So they really want you to watch the sugars. Before surgery, you have to go and lose weight. You have to follow their diet plan. And one of those things is sodas, no carbonation after surgery. So you had to get off all carbonated beverages. So there was just drinking water afterwards. There was making sure you get all your protein in, because you're restricted on how much you can eat, and so protein is number one.
Yeah.
Right after the surgery, you go through phases of liquid diet, then soft foods, and then about 6 weeks later, you can start adding other foods in.
Yeah. So the dumping syndrome that Kathy mentioned, that's basically when you consume something that you're not supposed to, such as the high sugary things. I think corn is another one that can trigger dumping syndrome. So some of the grain type products, sodas are really things that are sweet, can do that. And essentially you eat it and your body has an intense reaction and releases pretty much all of your intestinal contents all at once, and can make you feel quite sick, and you can get dehydrated very, very easily. As she mentioned too, the protein goals is something that is hammered in, and you're given minimums that you have to hit every single day. A lot of times they use protein shakes to help that, because the stomach is small and you can't absorb a lot at one time. Thinking back after that first surgery, what do you remember about the recovery time, how you felt? Think like that first kind of month right after surgery. What was recovery time like?
So my surgeon said, I asked him how long I had a desk job at the time, how much time I had to take off. He said, if you don't like being home, take 2 weeks. If you don't like being at work, you can take up to 6 weeks. So I split it in between, and I took the 3 weeks off. The third week I was at home, I started getting a little bit of energy, but I had no energy. And so I was glad I took the 3 weeks. So that recovery, the pain, I always tell patients, like, we have fat, it hangs. That hanging sensation is very hurtful when you have incisions. So they never suggested abdominal binder, but I think it's a life-saving thing. Eating I wasn't hungry. So eating was hard to get the protein in. When I started trying soft foods, the first thing that I ate made me very sick, and I was throwing up, and I didn't want to try any other foods. But by the time I went back to work on the 4th week, I was still on a diet of soft foods, but I had energy level back. But it did take about the 6 weeks. The biggest thing with any of the surgeries is you actually see a lot of people see hair loss about the 5-6 weeks after. And that's just from the nutrition changes.
Usually a quick change or quick weight loss too will trigger. And you can see that on some of the people that lose a lot of weight quickly on our plan. You just have a hair shift as a stress response type thing. But your hair grows back. It's temporary. It's not a forever type thing. It does grow back. What about, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but some of my patients report emotional changes during that time. They almost feel like some depression kick in, or feel vulnerable, something like that. Do you remember feeling emotions that you didn't feel before the surgery?
I think the emotions were mostly, I had a very supportive husband, and a lot of people don't have that. He was on every diet with me along the way. And so he was very supportive. And just to say, he's seen me go through it, and he says he will never have weight loss surgery. So, I mean, it's just not for everybody. But I think the biggest thing was having to adjust your thoughts with food, because the food was such an emotional thing for me, and it still is with my family.
Yeah.
That it was, I think I shared with you, both times I had surgery, my birthday was right around the corner. And it was like, oh, I can't have this cake. Like, I've had this cake for every other year of my birthday, and I can't have it. And so the connection of going out to eat, of going to parties, like it was more emotional when it came to that. I used food for emotion.
Yeah.
And so I had to find other ways to satisfy that
I
emotion.
hear that. You know, I follow a bariatric surgeon on social media, and he describes it almost as your best friend was immediately taken away, because food is always there, can always be a comfort, and it is so much tied into every part of our lives and family lives, and you have to figure out new ways to socialize with your family, socialize with your friends, and ways to make it not about the food and more about the relationships and the time together and things like that. So after your first surgery, how successful was that surgery for you? Did you meet your goals? How close to your goals did you get? That kind of thing.
So they set a goal for me, and I never did meet their goal.
Okay.
I lost 126 pounds.
Okay.
My life changed, but I never got the 30 pounds more that they wanted me to lose.
Gotcha.
I then kind of plateaued out, as we were talking before. The first year is the most important. You've got to stay with the diet. The second year, you can still lose weight. It gets a little harder. I plateaued out about the end of the second year. And then I gained a little bit of weight back, which is common. I stayed there for about 2-3 years, and then I gained more weight back.
Gotcha. Yeah. And some patients after surgery are surprised that weight gain is expected afterwards, but it's expected. It's expected for about 2 years to lose, and then some regain. The hope is that you don't regain a significant amount. I want to say they expect somewhere between 5 and 20 pounds, depending on how much weight you had to lose. So how much time was there between your first surgery and your second surgery?
So I want to say my first surgery was 8 years ago, and my second one was 2 years.
Okay. So what triggered you to go back and say, I need to think about this second surgery?
So as I said, the more knowledge I got, I realized that I really wanted the bypass instead of the sleeve. And unfortunately, I started looking into it about that 2-year mark, and none of my insurances would cover it. So it was like, okay, you can pay out of pocket, you can go to Mexico, but no one would cover it. So it was always in the back of my mind. And then finally I had an insurance company that would cover it.
Gotcha. So explain, so she had the Roux-en-Y surgery, which is traditional gastric bypass the second time around. Kind of explain what that surgery is.
So they then, with the sleeve, they remove the portion they cut off of your stomach. With the RNY, the gastric bypass, they do not remove it. They cut even a smaller pouch and leave a little itty bitty pouch, and leave the rest of the stomach sitting there. And then they go down to part of the intestines, cut it off, attach that up to your small pouch, and then wire it in. So the food that you eat goes into a different part of your intestines immediately, whereas the gastric juices from the stomach that's left there can still go in and help digest. But food doesn't go into that portion of the stomach anymore.
Gotcha. So you essentially absorb less of the foods that you take in, and you can take in less. So you're restricting your intake and restricting how much you absorb from that. Risk with that surgery, are they any different than the sleeve?
There's not really a huge difference. I think there's a little bit more risk just because they're moving things more around, that, things can get stuck together or it just doesn't work correctly. After surgery, you have a higher risk of malnutrition and of not having your vitamins. So that's very important after that surgery.
So did they recommend different vitamins after that second surgery than the first one?
They did. Still the multivitamin. Bariatric multivitamin, but then you're taking the bariatric iron, you're taking you're taking B12. There is a huge list of vitamins. I take tons of vitamins every day. And even with the vitamins, I've had vitamin deficiency problems and actually had to have iron transfusions just because what I was taking wasn't working.
Gotcha. What about nutritional needs? Are they different after the first surgery between the two surgeries? There are big differences between like the protein amounts that they gave you or how they told you to eat, or is it essentially the same?
It's essentially the same. I went to 2 different doctors,
Mhm.
so the offices had a little bit different to them, but it was essentially the same. Protein goal was still the most important. I did find that after having the bypass, I didn't feel as full. The sleeve made me really feel full, and I'm assuming that it's because you don't have the sphincter at the end that's holding it from dumping into the intestines. It's coming a little bit faster. That I actually don't feel as full as I did from the sleeve when I eat.
Yeah. You know, I wonder too, and this may just be us talking nerdy talk at this point, but the gastric hormones after surgery, you know, you see an increase in GLP-1 afterwards, you're more leptin sensitive, and ghrelin is really suppressed, which is your hunger hormone. And I wonder if that first surgery you really felt it, and then the second surgery is kind of like the second time you go back to medicine. I wonder if it just is not as feeling as strong as it did.
Well, it was even the difference between the day that I went on my liquid diet,
Yeah.
the way I felt to the day I was able to eat again. Like it was really, I could tell a difference. It just wasn't as restrictive.
Gotcha. Okay. So post-surgery recovery time, was that different than the first surgery recovery time?
For me personally, it was because I wasn't as overweight. I was more athletic. My abdominal binder was my lifesaver.
Best friend.
I slept with that and had it on for 3 weeks straight. It was the best thing I ever had. So for me, the recovery was better, but as far as most patients, it's the same.
About the same. Okay. And food restrictions the same. Still no carbonated beverages. Still not recommending the same foods that would cause the dumping syndrome afterwards.
They say about anything should not have more than 12 grams of sugar because anything over that will trigger dumping syndrome in the bypass.
And they do it in grams of sugar, not necessarily grams of carbohydrate.
And I find that some things affect me more than others.
Yeah.
I was out with a friend and there was honey and it was cheese and honey and I dipped the cheese. And for me, it wasn't immediately like gastric symptoms, but I got very hot and very sleepy to the point that I had to tell my friend I had to go.
Yeah.
And so that affected me. Even a small amount of honey affected me way more than something else would.
What about fiber? How do you do with fiber afterwards? Do you have to watch that amount? Can it make you feel full and bloated really quickly if you eat too much? Do you notice anything with that?
I avoid a lot of it the first surgery, like I gave up a lot of stuff like oats, rice, pasta, bread.
Something we want you to give up anyway. Okay.
So there was a few things that came back in my diet. The rice never did because that was my favorite food. And so it's never come back in my diet. I never drank another soda or carbonated drink. But with all the vitamins you take, I have to take to keep my iron and stuff up. I have a lot more constipation and stuff because of that. So it's kind of a little balance out of everything.
Gotcha. Okay. What about fluid intake? A lot of my patients who have gastric surgeries feel like they really struggle to get their fluid in and stay on a dehydrated level most of the time. How do you manage getting your fluid in afterwards?
So they teach you not to drink 30 minutes before and after your meals because fluid can rush the food through and you want your stomach, because you're not eating that much, to digest it. So when I was working in the hospital during COVID, I got dehydrated a lot because you can't just constantly sip in the hospital, and we had masks on and everything else. But if you're in a position, you just have to remind yourself to keep sipping.
You're constantly sipping, so no more guzzling anything at any point ever, or you're going to really, really regret it.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about the success after your second surgery.
So I, again, haven't met their goal yet.
Yes.
And I actually went back down to exactly where I went the first time.
Okay.
I weight. And I've stayed there. And it's still a struggle. I mean, it's still a diet. Obesity's for life. And it's no matter which way you go, it's still a struggle. But I wouldn't give up my journey for anything, because I went from not walking down the street of our house to running half marathons.
Yeah, and that's amazing.
And going to nursing school, because I was in a desk job and there was no way I could ever go to nursing school.
Yeah.
And I went to nursing school, became a nurse, so I would never give it up.
Yeah, talk about all those non-scale victories that we discuss in the clinic every day. It's not always about the number on the scale. It's about your life and how well you can live life, and the things that you can accomplish, and the things that make you proud of yourself, and the things you enjoy. The being able to wear clothes that you couldn't wear before, and sit in plane seats without having belt extenders, and feeling roller coaster? Wasn't that something you told me
yes.
about? Yes.
I have been asked to get off 2 because it didn't close
Yeah.
at 2 different occasions. So I told a couple of people to come in the clinic. I took pictures off the internet and made one piece of paper with all my pictures and stuck it on the refrigerator. So every time I walked by the refrigerator, I saw what my goals were, and it was roller coasters. So when I went to see my brother in Minnesota, we went on a roller coaster at the Mall of America for the first time. It was the seatbelt extension. I traveled a lot for work at the time, and I was so embarrassed when I traveled with coworkers that I actually bought my own extension that I would carry with it, so I wouldn't have to ask, or they wouldn't ask me. So that was even today, whenever I get on a plane, I take a picture of my lap because it's like, look at all the room I have left, and I send it to my husband. You know, clothing was a big thing too, and I love that I can shop any store I want to. One of the hardest things I will say with any weight loss, especially if you've been overweight for a long period of time, is the excess skin. And so it's like some things I thought I really like a goal to wear, I put them on, and my arms have so much excess skin that I'm just like, no, it's not going to work. But that you just kind of live around.
Yeah. Well, in excess skin, have you found, because I have a couple people or several people who went through weight loss surgery, have you found ways to deal with that for comfort? Because, you know, there's increased risk of infection, and just that, like you talked about, that bouncy sensation. Exercise, it can deter from exercise. So when you're going running, have you found particular clothing or things that have helped you deal with that?
So I've become the old lady that wears all my pants up to here.
Yeah.
And all of my tights are able to hold it in. You know, little like undergarments are a saver for that. For rubbing and stuff, I found that powder, and even like Summer's Eve does this active chafing cream. You put that on. Even they've got like runners use like Bodyguard and stuff. I use that in areas. When I do start seeing it being red, I have to make sure that it's constantly dry so it doesn't get worse. But clothing, leggings have been my friend just because it holds everything in.
Yeah. And so I have had some patients that have went on after weight loss surgery and had skin removal surgery after that. My feedback from them is once they're healed, they're happy with it. They're like, this is amazing. The acute recovery time is extremely painful. It's extremely painful. It's very uncomfortable because they essentially reorganize everything on your abdomen and sometimes arms and things like that. Insurance sometimes pays for skin removal surgeries. Sometimes they don't. We've found one surgeon here in our local area that does at least try to get it covered through insurance. I've only found one of all the plastic surgeons in the town that really work to have it covered. Reasons that insurance might cover it is frequent yeast infections, frequent sores, breakdown, pain, that kind of thing. People often think that when they have weight loss surgery, they're going to lose another 20 pounds just through that. Not weight loss surgery, skin removal surgery. They're going to lose like 20 pounds of skin. It's usually less than 10. And there's quite a bit of swelling afterwards and some fat remodeling and things. But most of the people, not right after, but probably about 6 months after, they're finally happy with that type of surgery. So who knows? You may decide to do that one day. You might not. It just depends on.
And a lot of the plastic surgeons want you to be down to a certain weight and stay there for a period of time. So I'm still after my 30 pounds. And I tell my husband that once I hit that, then we will go pay the money to have the plastic surgery.
Yeah.
That's really what I want.
Yeah. Let's see when we get there. So what about looking forward and then looking at your journey? I think mindset is a huge thing throughout it, and not really focusing on that number on the scale, and then, you know, the non-scale victory things, the support come along. Anything else you could suggest if someone's considering weight loss surgery, things that they need to consider and expectations they need to set in their mind about surgery, stuff like that? Just any tips of advice you would give?
One advice is stay off Facebook. As far as all the bariatric...
Unless you're on my channel. You can watch my channel.
Because all the bariatric groups, I mean, I'm on lots of them because they've got great recipes, but there's a lot of people that had bad things happen. And the good things, those people don't post.
Yeah.
So don't base your decision on that.
Other people's experience. Yeah.
Correct. I had friends who had the band, and so they had a lot of success. So I had a lot of people in my corner that had told me about their success, even though it was different surgeries. And so I knew that there was success, and I knew people that had success. So definitely talk to those that have had it, that you don't see all the complaints on Facebook. Another thing is it is all about your relationship with food, no matter which way you go. If you're going with, the medications or you're going with surgery, you have to change the way you have a relationship with food.
100%.
And so really working on that beforehand and working through it afterwards is a big thing. There's a lot of transfer of addiction, and so alcohol can be one of those, and a lot of gastric patients end up having alcohol use problems. Mm-hmm. One thing is there's a lot of research that show a glass of wine before surgery and a glass of wine a year later, your blood alcohol is way different. That glass a year later actually makes you really drunk, and you're over the legal limit with one glass of wine. Yeah. So you have to watch not to transfer your addiction somewhere else. So working on the relationship with food and learning that it's okay to throw food away. Yeah. That was one of the hardest with my mother. I hear my mother going, you can't throw that away. It's okay. Uh-huh. And also, it's okay not to have to tell everybody what you've done. Yeah. I have ways of messing around with my plate and no one knows that I didn't eat everything. Mm-hmm. And so it's really just figuring out that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And we speak to that a lot in the clinic. You probably hear me talk about food addiction if you come in, and food addiction is real. We don't like to admit that it's real, but it is. And a lot of times there is that transfer of addictions from drugs and alcohol to food, or vice versa, back and forth. So dealing with that is important. The other thing I remember us talking about is self-advocacy. Mm-hmm. And, standing up for yourself, being well educated, making sure that you're getting the treatment that is best for you. And I think you had mentioned that was your one regret looking back, is that at the time you had your first surgery, you weren't in a place of knowledge to be your own self-advocate. And so that would be something to throw in there too.
Yeah, it's definitely, you have to advocate for yourself and what you want, because you're going to be pushed in certain ways. Mm-hmm. Even the day that I had surgery, the first surgery, they tell you no carbonation. And that they tell you when you come out of surgery, they're going to give you like some things to eat and some Jell-O and some of the stuff you had. They took me to the floor, and it was after the cafeteria had closed, so I wasn't going to get a tray. And the nurse kept trying to give me Sprite. Here I've been taught never to drink soda again, and she was pushing it. She's like, "No, it's okay. It won't hurt you." And I'm having to advocate for myself right after surgery, saying, "No, I can't have that." Yeah. And it comes when you have bypass, you have to be really concerned about some of your medications. So you have to, even afterwards, advocate that, if you go to a walk-in clinic, no, I can't have that. Like, you have to know what you can and can't have.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you can think of that we need to throw out there before we leave our people?
I just think that no matter, it's like you always say, it's your journey. Mm-hmm. And it's not for everybody, but if you are struggling, and everything's not working, at least go talk to a surgeon. Yeah. There's a lot of requirements before. A lot of times you have to have a psych eval. You have to have gone through, a lot of insurance companies require you to have gone through dietary documentation. Mm-hmm. Luckily, your clinic would count as that for most insurances. Sometimes it's 6 months, 9 months, 10, a whole year. Know your insurance requirements so that you know what you need. You have the psych eval, you have dietary, you have to lose a set amount of weight. I had to lose 20 pounds in a month for me to even get approved. You then, after you've been approved and get your surgery date, you still have to follow a liquid diet. And if you show up, my first time it was 14 days of 5 protein shakes a day, and that was all I was allowed to have. And if I had shown up and gained weight, it's more that they don't want to crack your liver and stuff during surgery.
It's safety. Yeah. It's not because they're trying to be mean or cruel or judgmental. It is truly a safety issue. And that quick weight loss is not just because they want to prove it to you that you can do it with diet. It's because it actually clears out liver fat. And when your liver is smaller, it makes the surgery safer. You're less likely to have bleeding out issues and things like that. Just because when the liver's full of fat, it's taking up room that they need to maneuver inside your body.
The second time around, they only made me do a 5-day liquid diet, and it was kind of when the hospitals were shutting down for COVID, and I was terrified that I would spend 5 days on liquid and then they would cancel it.
Have your surgery.
But I lucked out. They canceled everything the week before and everything the week after,
but not
my week. I was
Yay.
Yes, I was pretty lucky for that. But just knowing, like I said, know your insurance, talk to them, educate yourself, talk to people that you know that had it, and just decide whether it's for you, because it's a lifelong decision.
Yeah, it is a lifelong decision, and it's a tool. It's not a permanent fix. It is just another tool in our toolbox to to fight obesity. You still have to focus on nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep, like we talked about every day here in the clinic. And so I hope this has been helpful. And if you see us for weight loss and you want to have a further discussion about surgery, we can do that at any of your appointments. And if you're needing help with weight loss, please give us a call and get on our list to come in and see us. It is our passion to truly help everybody change their life. So until next time, have a great evening.
Bye.